as we made plans to bring this service to you here at Central Union Church, we discovered this thread of serendipity that the senior minister, David Hirano, would be hosting us, and that he had a unique and special connection to Patrick because it was in those days and as he knew him. Reverend Hirano.
Well, I'll tell you about Pat. I came home to pastor Nuuanu Congregational Church in 1974. And when I came to pastor that church, he was the choir accompanist. And Kaipo Hale was the choir director. And I found out that he was Southern Baptist. And I thought, oh man, that's great, because I grew up Southern Baptist. My father was a Japanese language pastor at Olivet Baptist. And then when he was hauled away by the American government and put in internment camps on the mainland, we became members at University Avenue Baptist Church. But I grew up Southern Baptist, steeped in that. And I knew also that he was a wonderful pianist. And so on Sunday mornings when we would sing a hymn like "What a Friend We Have in Jesus," or the Old Rugged Cross, I'd say to then Pat, how about playing the piano like a Southern Baptist? Because the organist was really traditional, and it played like congregational churches play their hymns, and he was a little bit more and it was really great. And those of you who are in my generation know that the 70s were times when people were struggling with lots of things, and Pat was struggling with lots of things. So he would come into my office and we would talk. We'd talk about numbers of things. And there were times when he would get terribly depressed. And I left that church. He left Nuuanu before I did and went into entertaining. And we'd visit him at Benihana or other places where he was entertaining. And we kept up a friendship as long as we were here. In 1987, we moved back to the mainland and did not come back until I retired in 1999. I lost track of him. Then, when I was in my first interim here, that's about 7 years ago, I went to a media gathering at the Counseling and Spiritual Care Center of Hawaii. And across the room, I saw Pat. And so I walked over to him and I said, "Hey, Pat, how you doing?" He said, "Oh, I changed my name." And he told me he was Sky St. John now, and that he was a reverend. And then he said to me, "Do you remember that I called you one night late at night?" And I said, and I really thought about his question, and I said, "Well," and he said, "Well, that telephone call saved my life." And to this day, I don't remember the call. You know something, though? My wife does. And I don't know really what I said. I think I listened more than said anything. But I was really astounded that that telephone call saved his life. He gave me a hug, and we left. I went to visit him at Unity Church on a Sunday when I wasn't here or in some other church that I was serving. And he told the congregation the story. And I just about, wanted to kind of crawl underneath the pew. But this is what I have learned from that experience. And it is that we don't know how God will use us or how God changes us. And what I've heard about Sky St. John is that his blue eyes and his gravelly laughter and that bit of him that was really charismatic touched a whole bunch of folk and made a really big difference. And I'm really glad to have been a part of that.
Rebirth and recreation comes in all forms, and Sky experienced it throughout his life, and he invited us to be aware and ready for that recreation in our own lives. Today, Jo-Ann Adams comes to share her experience of Sky and his interest in recreating and share with us her memories of their meeting over 25 years ago.
Thank you, Margie. I've known Sky for 26 years, which, like others, mean I knew him as Patrick, and this Sky St. John business, I didn't understand that quite at all. I could get the Sky part, the blue eyes, the freeness, sky's the limit. I could get that part, but the St. John part, not so much. I think we met in either late 1987 or 1988. I've tried to piece together a timeline, but it's been 26 years, so I may be off by a year or 2 or 3 or 4. But I'm sure if I get something wrong, Sky will let us know. So I met him in late 1987 or early 1988, and what I remember is meeting him at the early morning meeting that I would attend every morning. And I remember that it was a stormy day because we normally would meet out in the park under the palm trees, and instead we were meeting in that little teeny band shell that they had, the little teeny Waikiki, not the Waikiki shell, the little teeny band shell, and trying to keep out of the rain. And he came consistently with this guy, and so I applied lesbian logic, and lesbian logic is, if you appear anywhere in public with the same person 3 or more times, you must be romantically involved. So I assumed that this man was his lover, and that they were an item, and I was surprised that such a vibrant young guy like Sky was involved with someone who was feeling the effects of alcohol. Let's just put it that way. Now, probably that person is in this audience, and if they have remained sober, they can show me they are now a vibrant person, and we're probably about the same age. But I just figured, drinking alcohol takes you to strange places and introduces you to interesting people, and who am I to judge? So I was immediately taken with Sky because he was a great storyteller, and I love storytellers. And he was witty and charming and smart and honest. And had I known he was from Texas, I would have said he was a Southern gentleman. He was incredible. His drunkalogue was absolutely hilarious. And he would say that every time he was worried about his drinking, he'd go out and get another degree to assure himself that he was okay. So what I realized that we had that bond in common because I am anything but self-educated. I have to be enrolled in class with a grade before I'm going to learn something. So I realized that we shared the common characteristics, that our multiple advanced degrees were not a sign of achievement, they were symptoms of dysfunction. And Sky and I got sober at about the same time. He got sober in 1982, and I got sober in 1983. And for those in recovery will relate easily to this, but what you have to understand is if you even get sober at about the same time and you trudge that path together, there's a bond that forms no matter how much time you spend with each other. It's sort of like a trenches camaraderie. You know, you've made it through together, and we shared that. At the time that we were getting sober, the alkathons were being held at the Kapahulu Library, and you always knew to show up at the Kapahulu Library for Thanksgiving, Christmas, and New Year's and bring food. That was what we always did, and we relied on that. Now, I'm going to digress because it's funny how I got to know Sky and his complexity. After I came here, I went home to Christmas with another fellow named James Enfield. We went to the local gay bar in Seattle called the Monastery, because it used to be a church, now it's a gay bar. And we were transformed to a new spiritual plane because they were doing two-step and line dances, and they weren't doing that here in Hawaii. So we learned quickly how to two-step and line dance, and we came back, and we started teaching it here at the local bar called Cats. Now, they loved it because we taught early. Nobody was in the bar. I mean, you know, bar people will not show up before 9 o'clock. It's just simply not done. So we would teach early, and by the time we were exhausted, the regular crowd would come in. And one of the guys who began dancing was this very handsome man named Danny. Very pleasant, but he was so handsome and such a terrific dancer that his dance card was always full. A few years later, I was hired by the Department of the Attorney General, and my boss decided to give me a tour. And who do I see on that tour? Dance Card Danny. It turns out that he worked for the Department of the Attorney General, too. And I found out shortly after that he and Sky were partners, not Mr. Broken Down. So I felt much better about that. So in September of 1993, I left for law school, and I thought the world of Sky. And when I think the world of somebody, it means you go from I'll see you list to my annual Christmas letter list, and he went on my annual Christmas letter list. Now, that doesn't mean that it arrives in time for Christmas. It means Christmas makes me feel guilty enough that I need to write the annual letter. So we communicated from 1993 for the next 12 years. I would write the letter. He would get it. Sometimes it had to follow him because he moved around so much. He would eventually get the letter, and he would write back. So that's how we kept in touch. And that's how I found out that he went to Missouri to become a minister. I mean, what a godforsaken place. But anyway, and I noticed there was no mention of Danny. You know, who am I to judge? You know, he spent several years at Unity Village. Then he started moving around as he became a minister. In 2001, Bev and I moved back to Honolulu, and in 2005, Sky returned. Now, in 2006, now it doesn't mean I would go to the church or anything, because I had sworn off church. In 2006, we were wringing our hands. See, Sky, I told you. That's him letting me know I should have started in church as soon as I knew he was back in town. So we're wringing our hands because we had been holding all the alkathons at Waikiki Community Center. And they had informed us that since Christmas was falling on a Sunday, we could not hold the alkathon there. So there was much wringing of hands because it's difficult to find a place that will house alcoholics for 24 hours. So we were sort of pressed, you know, and I said, you know what? I sobered up with this guy, Sky St. John, and he's now the minister at Unity. Why don't we go ask him? Now, this story, I think, is so characteristic of Sky. We went in like Oliver, with our little plate, more porridge, please. Could we have one alkathon here for 1 year? He says, let's have all 3 alkathons here, and let's have them from now on. And the alkathons are still there from that day. And then as we left and we started to come down the stairs, he says, Jo-Ann, when you and I were getting sober, the Kapahulu Library meant so much to me. So that's why he did it. I miss him, you can tell. I think we all do. But I know he's in a better place. And the reason that I know he's in a better place is because he's there. Because every place he goes, he makes it a better place.
Yes, indeed. Sky was constantly re-envisioning himself, his life, his work. He taught us all to embrace change. He spoke about it in classes. He spoke about it in Sunday messages, and he especially spoke about it in song. The photos you were about to see are set to accompanying music that was Sky's own composition, and the voice you hear is Sky St. John singing his own words.
You're being born, a star shines for you. You're being born, your eyes see anew that the world has been waiting for the life that you bring. You're being born, you're being born. Archangels sing, you're being born in spirit and in mind. You're being born with a new heart. You'll find that the world has been waiting for your holy birth. You're being born, you're being born, peace on earth. And though the world will tell you that it's painful and it's hard, and what you lose will surely break your heart, the Spirit is calling you to be all you can be. Remember, God is with you, and just breathe and you'll be born. A holy choir is singing, you are born, and heaven's bells are ringing, and the world is breathless now to see just who you are. You're being born, you're being born, you're being born, a brand new star, a brand new star.
Sky had a huge impact not only here in his local community, but in our unity movement and around the world. So as we thought of who to invite to speak to his participation in our unity spiritual movement, the choice was really quite easy. Reverend Phil Pierson and his wife Dorothy were powerful unity ministers all through their career. Phil is now retired, and Dorothy dances with Sky this day. Dorothy and Phil served at our Unity Church of Hawaii in the mid-60s, and they were the figurative architects of our beautiful chapel that sits at the slopes of Diamond Head. Phil served in a number of capacities. He was the vice president of the Unity Institute, our seminary. He served as the president of Unity Worldwide Ministries, our governing body. And mostly he and Dorothy held the idea for unity representing love and bringing people together around the world. Wherever they served, not only did they lead the church that they were in, but they had the idea of expanding the parameters of love and its location, and they seeded other churches around them everywhere they served. Will you welcome Reverend Phil Pierson?
I'm from that God-forsaken place called Lee Summit, Missouri. Where did she go? As Margie has already said, I'm retired, so I feel a little rusty standing here. But I'm very privileged to be here to represent some wonderful organizations that love Sky and wanted to be a part of this day. Unity Worldwide Ministries was very proud to call Sky as one of our ministers. And so they have asked me to give their special blessing to you today, as well as Unity School of Christianity and also of Silent Unity. I had lunch with the director of Silent Unity just last week, and she asked for me to convey to all of you that Silent Unity was praying with you on this particular day for this service, but also unfolding Sky, who they love so much. In the time that I have allotted, I just want to make one point about my relationship to Sky and to something that's true about him and his life. I want to affirm that Sky, with all the incredible things that we've already celebrated about him, he was a incredibly gifted, talented personality. From the time he was a child, you could see the light just shined forth through him. But beneath all of that, he had a very real and deep commitment to the activity of God in his life and the certainty that his life was not unfolding by chance. You wouldn't always know that from all the things we saw, that he seemed always so bright and gay and bubbly through life. But beneath it all, he knew that his life was being guided by Spirit. And the one instance that I can give you as an example of that truth, and that it applies to everything that happened in his life, including the way in which he left us. As has already been shared by Margie, I was asked in 2004 to take on the role of vice president in charge of the Unity Institute at Unity School. And when I took over, Sky was on my staff. He was a teacher. But I also discovered that he had a very binding contract with Unity School, that he would be there to teach until the ministry opened at our Unity Village Chapel, which was the church at headquarters. We all knew that he could make a tremendous contribution to that ministry. So he and I talked on a number of occasions about the opportunity was there for him. And just as we knew that the minister that was serving there then was going to be leaving, something amazing happened, and that was that there was a change in the leadership of the Unity Church of Hawaii. And so I remember still very vividly the day that I called Scott to come to my office, and I said, Scott, we both know what has just happened, and we're both aware that you have committed yourself to stay here and to take over the village chapel, which will soon be open. And I know that we're both aware that the church in Hawaii is just open. And I said, I feel very moved for us to make a spiritual decision and asked him to pray with me. And so we prayed. And then I said, Sky, my heart, my love for Hawaii says to me that I release you from your contract to serve here at Unity Village, if it is your guidance to go to the ministry in Hawaii. So I asked him to pray about that decision because ultimately it needed to be his decision then. So he took a week and he came back in to see me and he said, I want to go to Hawaii. Now, I've shared that story for this reason. Had there been someone else serving in the capacity that I had just been called to take charge of there at Unity School, they would have said to Sky, Sky, the village chapel is open now and you have a contract to fill it. But it just happened, and I put quotation marks around that, it just happened that somebody who had a love for Hawaii as deep as Sky's, not only did we have the privilege of being a part of the early days of the Unity Church here in Hawaii and building the church there, we also formed the Church of Maui. So had anybody else been there, Sky would have been at Unity Village and he would have done a tremendous job, and I don't think you would have seen him here in Hawaii. But the Spirit wanted Sky here, and he has done an incredible job. All through his life, with as many turns and twists that we've heard folks talk about, I know from having shared deeply with Sky while he was there at the school, that deep inside himself he had no doubts that God was guiding every step of his life. That was true in the early days of his life, in the middle of it, when I touched his life, and it was true in his very last days here with you. His life was fulfilling its unfoldment and purpose. I've just finished writing a book entitled The Metaphysics of Buckminster Fuller. And Buckminster Fuller makes a tremendous point. He said, we're at a critical point in evolution. We have to learn to stop living by the brain and start living from the heart. Sky lived from the heart. God bless him. God bless each of you for having been a part of his ministry and the light that you will continue to be to honor him. Aloha.